Yes, to pick up where we kind of left off, you're talking about like 1975, but it would also be great if you can kind of like transition into kind of 78 when you founded FUBA with Sipho Sepamla, and kind of the process that led up to like FUBA's opening, and maybe touching on the kind of impact that FUBA had on the South African cultural landscape.
Okay. I think I'm going to have to not talk much about the Market Theatre, although it is a very critical moment. I should talk about it, you know, because I see you have it again. I don't know if who's going to ask me about that, but let's go briefly as far as we can. When I come to Johannesburg, I do a couple of things at Dorke House. Dorke House was the center of what was happening in the arts for Black folk in Johannesburg. And it was run by liberal whites. And it had two levels to it. One was a training base called AMDA, African Music and Drama Association. And then it had a more kind of professional, quasi-professional theater and music outfit called Phoenix Players. And Phoenix Players was the one that engaged me to come. And, you know, I wasn't very happy about working in that kind of environment, given the fact of my own, you know, growth and understanding of what theater meant to a person who was oppressed. So I reluctantly got involved. And when I got involved, I had to put my all into it. And the first thing I did was I was given the task of directing a celebrity concert. Now, I didn't like the idea of celebrity. What the hell did that mean? And the producer, Ian Bernard, said to me, well, you know, we'll try to get the best top flight black and white artists together. It was at that time an unheard of thing to be able to bring them together and do a fundraising concert for the work of FUBA. And that would mean that we had to do it in a venue that we could get by. So we did it at Temple Emmanuel in Parktown, if you know it, near the school.
Yeah.
And we also had to work with artists when they were free. So we had to do it on a Sunday, you know, and it was a big event. And as I walked into the hall, I looked at the stage and I said, no, I can't work that way. And so what I did, I said, I'd like to stand on the stage and I'd like to convert the auditorium into an indoor Woodstock. So that was the nerve of my creativity. And I put this to the team at Phoenix Players, and they accepted the idea. And it was massive because we only had one day in which to set up. I had to do all the searching and the identifying of all the artists for weeks before that, meeting them in between their rehearsals and meeting them at their homes and what have you, and then finally put together a program of, you know, all the big names at that time. And I had Lionel Pillay, who was a master pianist, as my conductor, because we put an orchestra together, a 14-piece orchestra together for that. And, you know, the big names of that time, both black and white, were there. And we did this event. And it was very successful. And many people came up to me and said, but, where are you from? Who are you? And, all that sort of stuff. When they looked at me and when I went to their places to say, I'm ready to direct this piece, they looked at me and said, but where does this guy come from? So that was the problem in Johannesburg at that time. Um, you know, Racism was rife, and people in the theater were not untouched by it,
Mm-hmm.
So they were rather guarded about who this guy is. But amongst them was my lighting man, a wonderful man by the name of Manny Menem of the Market Theatre. And this was before the Market actually started in 1975. And he was really taken up with my grasp of all these. I was just 30 years old, less than 30. This is 75. I'm less than 30. I'm actually 28. Yeah. And I'm dealing with all these big names, and I'm dealing with them with the aplomb and the professionalism of a theater director, And it was a very successful night, but Manny was quite taken up with me and convened a couple of meetings and started to talk to me about what I was doing and so on. And I reminded him that when I came back from London in 1974, I had gone, after meeting Athol in London and Johnny and Winston, they were in London at the time doing Sizwe Banzi and The Island. And we were great comrades, and we worked together, and we had a lot of fun together as well while I was a student. So every weekend I would be with them, with my soon-to-be wife, whom was in London with me also at that time. And I went to Cape Town, to the Space Theatre first, to see if they would enable me to work. And I said to Brian Asprey, it's great that you guys have got this theatre, but I would like to set up a black company, because I see that the main body of people that you work with here come from the old performing arts councils. And if we are going to challenge the order in this country, we need to strengthen the arm of black artists. And I would like to run a company here. And when I said that, he got a bit worried. And he said to me, what we need to do is perhaps give you a chance to take part in the play. And we are doing Jean Genet's, one of his plays, I can't remember now, it's a well-known piece. And I said, well, I can act, because I'm trained both as an actor and as a director, and I have many years of experience as an actor. But I don't think I want to do that, because I want to work in the framework of a black theatre company. And I left Cape Town and came back to Durban, tried a couple of things there, and then came to Johannesburg. And when I came to Johannesburg, there was Manny tempting me with the idea that the Market Theatre was about to be happening. But before that, I did for Phoenix Players the first black version of Busman and Leona. And it went on a national tour, and I had a wonderful actress from Bosmont, Nuclear, Ingrid Adams. And I still, I still think that she left the theater rather soon, because she was a great talent, and what a performance of Leona. And I had Sol Rachilo playing Busman. And Sol Rachilo was a very dark looking Busman. And it was very powerful. And he had these long hands that he could stretch up. He was a tall man. And, he was quite an amazing character to have on stage. And we did that production, and it did very well, and it traveled around the country. But you know, my time at Dorkey House with Phoenix Players was under stress because I wasn't paid, even though I did those two major works. Mm-hmm. And I was being tempted with a scholarship to take part in a multi-regional tour. People from multi-regional areas, people from India, Pakistan, Jamaica, all over the world, from Europe, Eastern Europe, all getting together and going to America on a scholarship to study the arts in the Americas. Of course, I took the task because I was interested in learning about the Free Southern Theatre and the civil rights movement in terms of the arts. And I went along. And when I got back, it was at the end of 1975. When I got back, I was already working, you know, a little bit at the Market Theatre towards the end of 1975, because I was very disturbed that I didn't have any money from Phoenix Players. And when I was leaving to America, you know, I was told that there was no money. And I said, but you know, this is difficult. I can't live like this. I can't live in your house. I need my own place. And so my partner at the time, we weren't married. She had to stay, and she was in Johannesburg with me. And she didn't want to stay with at Ian's home because it wasn't an environment that we felt happy in. And so he found a flat for us at the High Point building in Hillbrow. At that time, Hillbrow was the place. It was plush. Yeah. And you couldn't walk into High Point if you're nogal daki. You know, it was just not accepted. If you're coming there, you must be coming on some kind of a mission, perhaps to deal in drugs or deal in prostitution or whatever. So every day was an ordeal going into that building, you know. And what happened is that in the beginning, I think we got there at the end November, December of 1975. And in the first month of 76, I heard that I was given an award. The first time a Black actor was given a major award for Best Actor for my performance in The Blood Knot. Now, I was already, you know, working with the Market Theatre. The pre-work before the plays was cleaning up the place and getting the Market Theatre ready for performance, you know. And I had brought one of my technical people from Durban and offered him a job at the Market Theatre. Well, introduced him to Manny, and Manny gave him a job as stage manager there, lighting technician and all that sort of thing. And he said to me, his name is Alan Joseph, and Alan said to me, hey, Ben, don't be hassled. Go to Durban, get this award. And I said, man, I can't. It just grates me to be able to go there and be part of this charade, you know. And he convinced me, and I said, okay. He said to me, it's going to help me in my career. So I went with him, and I got there, and I really was unhappy because they wouldn't give me a chance. I was Best Actor, and they wouldn't give me a chance to speak. But they were all, very importantly, wanting to be taking photographs with me. And amongst them was the guy that I'd beaten, who was my former professor at Durban West or Salisbury Island at that time. And of course, you know, it was quite a tense moment, but he took it, you know. He was always chosen as the Best Actor because he would take part in the Passion Play in Durban, which was very famous. And so, yeah, that was a problem. So when I got back to Joburg, there was a paper, a photograph that appeared of me receiving the award. for which I was not able to speak and say thank you and be critical of the award and of the system, which is what I wanted to do, you know.
Yeah.
And I felt so compromised. But when I got back to my home, my flat in High Point, I met in the building going up the caretaker of the building. And he said to me, are you the person I saw in the paper? I said, which paper? And he said, the Sunday Tribune. So I said, oh, maybe. He says, is that you? I said, yes. But he said, you're not allowed to live here. You know, simply, straight up. And as I got off and I went to my flat, by the evening, I got him coming to visit and giving us an eviction order. And when I phoned Ian Bernard and said to him, listen, this is what is happening here. You know, he couldn't do a thing.
Yeah.
He said, but it's not in your name. They can't. I said, they've done it. And what's more, when I had a function at my home for my wife's birthday, only Manny Manham and his girlfriend could come.
Sure.
The rest of them were not allowed because they were all black. And one guy was told, what are you doing with this woman? Are you taking her to prostitute? And it was his wife. And that really cut me. I said, well, this is to hell. I'm not going to be here. And I think it was, my wife's birthday was in the middle of February. And so I left. I left, and Gideon Kamiwa, who was working at Dorkey House, was a very close friend of mine. He took myself and my wife, and we stayed in Chiawelo in Soweto. And because I didn't know many people in Johannesburg, and Gideon was really a superhuman being. And we lived in his home for a couple of weeks, and I couldn't find a place. I walked the length and breadth of the city. And then I eventually had to leave my wife to live with somebody else in the city because she was working elsewhere and couldn't commute easily. At that time, we didn't have taxis in Soweto. Yeah. So it wasn't easy for her to commute, and I didn't have a vehicle. So I went back to Durban, giving it all up. And then Manny Manham wrote me a letter, and he said, I want you to come and join us as a resident director at the Market Theatre. And so I wrote back to him and I said to him, Manny, I'm not prepared to be part of your structure, especially I'm not prepared to be part of what you call a state of mind. You know, I said, because the struggles that I'm having of living and finding a place to live and being shunted from one end to the other and being abused by the white community in this town disturbs me no end. And I'm not prepared. So that was the nub of it. But, on reflection and thinking about it and being separated from my wife and so on, I decided, well, maybe I should go and try it out. I knew in my heart of hearts what Steve had already discovered in the movement, and that is working in an environment of white liberals is not necessarily going to be easy for me, because the white liberal is being liberal all the time. And in being liberal, he tends to hide behind the base of the racism that we were living under. And with all the strength of my consciousness and my understanding and the lovely people that I met there, Manny Manham was really, and still is, a very close friend of mine, But working under those circumstances, they did nothing to get me a home. I had to find my own way, find a place. And when I got into that place, lo and behold, the group areas was there. to say to me, you are living in a white area. So having gone out of High Point, there I get into this place. And what happens now? So you're living here, and within a week of it, I'm taken to court. And I make a friend at the Market Theatre, and she was the mayoress of Johannesburg. And she was Molly Sklar. She was an actress, actually. And Molly said to me, listen, I'll try to see what I can do and get you some kind of representation when you go to court. And she used to come to me at 8 in the morning in the mayor's car. My wife would have gone by then. And the neighbors would be peering out of the windows and seeing, what is this? What is the mayor doing here? You know, the neighbors were all railway workers and so on. In Park Lane or Park Drive, Mayfair. One street away from Fortsburg. That's the ridiculous thing about it. And this was a broken down kind of place, and really cold and ugly, windows broken and what have you. But, you know, we were living there. And she used to come, and eventually I went to court, and I was given a 3-year suspended sentence for living in a white area. And I was told that if I was found living in that white area, I would be put into jail without an option of a fine. Now, I'm working at the Market Theatre. You would think that there would have been a response from the others working there, the famous Barney Simon and all the other people. Nobody helped me in that moment. Yeah, I had to deal with it on my own. And I had met another well-known director at that time. He was a lecturer at Wits, Rob McLaren, Mshengu. He was running Workshop 71. And he said to me, listen, I know a friend down the road on the Fordsburg side, and I'll introduce you to him and see if he can't get you a place. And I went there and I found that he had introduced me to Dr. Ismail Nagdi. And this man was to become a great benefactor in my life, a wonderful human being, a wonderful family. And he took my wife and I on, and we had a little one-room place next to his house, you know. And in that place, I was able to live my life, you know, relatively okay while I worked at the Market Theatre. But certainly with a lot of attention from a certain security policeman who was from Eldorado Park, who drove a black Valiant. And, you know, when I got to the Market Theatre, Manny said to me that when you came here, the police also came. So I carried with me that kind of throwback from my Durban days. And I was doing, I was rehearsing, you know, during the period of June 76, the play Waiting for Godot. Those of you who know it, would have been, you would know that it's carrying the classic image of master-servant relationships. And it was a powerful piece of work. But during that time, it was very difficult to rehearse because the actors couldn't get to me all the time. You know, there were difficulties of moving and so on. And eventually one of the actors just disappeared. And so I had to stop the production. And then we had just a couple of weeks to get to opening. And I said to Manny, well, you know, Fats Bukhalani is around and I've done the production of The Blood Knot. Can I do it? You know, and it was going to be the second production in the upstairs theater at the Market Theatre. And I had very little time, so I went straight into it and I did the play. I did The Blood Knot, and that was what drew a lot of attention. And Manny did say to me that the police were there and they asked questions about what I was doing there and so on and so forth. And so that became another pressure. And then immediately after that, I did another production, which was the Waiting for Godot. I think in September of August of 1976, I did that, and it was a production which, when the play had turned 50, it was announced as one of the 6 most important plays, versions of his play that Jean-Paul Sartre, was it? No, what's his name? I forget his name now. The writer, Irishman. What is it? Waiting for Godot? Well, the name just slips my mind. I'm thinking of so many things. But that was what happened then. And he gave us the rights to do that play, and felt that it was a very important moment that, Beckett, of course. Beckett, yes.
I can't remember the first name.
Thomas, no.
Samuel.
Beckett,
Yeah.
Samuel Beckett, of course. You know, it's quite amazing that the name just slips. But you know, that Godot still attracts attention wherever I go. And I've been doing interviews about that particular production many times. But it's interesting that at that time, the guy that was playing the part of Pozzo, the master character in the play, disappeared just before opening, and I had to play the part, you know. And it was quite a challenge to play that part, because it required quite a strong volume in terms of the actor. And I was quite a slim Jim at that time. So I think I carried it off fairly well. But at that time, there was a new consciousness that was growing with the Market Theatre establishing itself. At that point, while I was there, the Market Theatre had an all-white board. And, you know, even before we opened the theatre, they were struggling with the idea of how they were going to invite mixed audiences. And I said to them, but I've done it. I'll give you the recipe. But there was a lot of fear about it. And they eventually ran it when they discovered that it was a zoning as a market that enabled people of color to come to it. So if they don't alter that zoning, they could use it. So that's what was eventually done. But I said to them that if they weren't able to get that going, I wouldn't take part in an all-white theater. And so that was a debate that we had. My serious concerns with being at the market is that there was an attempt by AMDA from Dorkey House, and a couple of people, and I think amongst them was Sipho, who came to discuss the possibility of the market engaging and giving space to those projects from Dorkey House, you know. And I was in that meeting, and I must say, I was pushing, even when I went to the market, to have what I call the third world theater, a black theater there, you see. So Manny was not keen on that. So I then tried to get the Africana Museum section. At that time was empty, that section behind the Market Theatre. And I pained myself, actually bought a civic suit, I called it a civic suit, in order to go to an event, an all-white event at the City Council, in order to meet the critical people that could help me to make a decision on whether I could find a space there. You know? And I like the idea of working there simply because I used to rehearse in that large empty space. And I was told that I couldn't because it was earmarked for the Africana Museum. Africana meaning relating to Africa, as opposed to the Africana. So that was the situation. And then I did the musical at the market called The Me Nobody Knows. Now, The Me Nobody Knows was to celebrate, in a sense, the first anniversary of June 76. So I was doing it in June 1977. But come at the moment, this was the first integrated production at the Market Theatre and the first musical. And I was given the task of putting it together. And this was a critical matter, because what happens at this point is that the young people were Black kids that were in this integrated production, couldn't stay at home because there was a call for a stay at home for June 16th of that year. And they came to speak to me, and I said, but it's important, we have to stay away. It's an important part of our calendar, you know. And so this became an issue with the producer, who was Manny Menem. And he had a meeting with us in the cast, and I sat there, and I was, you know, quite frankly, quite disturbed, because he was finding every reason why the theater had to keep its lights on, when my life did not have a light. And many of those people that were around the Market Theatre are not part of its core, you know. And I raised this, and I put a very strong case about it, but it wasn't listened to. And Manny said, well, you've signed a contract to the actors. These are young people, all under 20. Yeah. And he's saying to them, you've got a contract. What we will do is we will find you alternate accommodation. You'll come and stay with others, whites in the suburbs, and you will do this play. And I was appalled by that. I really was appalled. But, you know, being a director of the theater, I could take a decision and say, I'm not going to the theater on that day, which I didn't. And there was one other person who did it, and it was a young woman who was an understudy in the musical by name Ruth Masillo. I remember her name because she stood her ground and said, no, I will not. You know, everybody else was compromised. And that moment was the moment of no return. I said to Manny, this is the beginning of the end. I cannot be part of this. You've not given me an opportunity to be part of your board, and you still retain it as a white board. It's only when I left the market the following, in October of 1977, that they then started to bring people like Kasim Saluji, and later on Dr. Motlana, you know, to sit on the board. But you know, I felt that the opportunity to work with creative people like myself and others, we could have made a massive change, and we could have created an environment. So this was a very important background to how FUBA starts. I think what we need to understand, taking out of this discussion, two very important things, or perhaps three. One, the fact that the Market Theatre, when given the opportunity to open its doors to AMDA and Phoenix Players and a few other agencies, including my idea at that time, because at that time I was running a theatre company called the Alternate Theatre Company, you know, and they lost that opportunity. And I wanted to create what I call the third space at the Market Theatre. Mm-hmm. The second was the fact that my life did not matter as a Black person. You know, whether I lived in a place where I was being hounded by the group areas police and taken to prison, or taken to court and given a 3-year sentence, didn't matter. You know, whether I was kicked out of Hillbrow didn't matter. Whether I was earning enough to keep my wife and myself together didn't matter. But the lights of the theater mattered. Mm-hmm. You got to keep the lights on. And the other issue that was significant is the fact that June 76 had raised the most important catalytic moment in our history, a moment of amazing change, an amazing tragedy, and that we, on the first anniversary, did not close the theater. And I was expected to bring the Black audience in. And I said, how am I to bring a Black audience here if you alienate the people? You cannot alienate them. So this debate was, a huge issue. At the same time, Black thinking in all our communities was starting to gel together. And people were asking themselves questions, especially in the circle of artists, Black artists that were around. We have to do something about it. And in this moment is when the conversation begins.